Short-term memory is the second stage of the multi-store memory model proposed by Atkinson and Shafran. The duration of short-term memory seems to be between 15 and 30 seconds, and the capacity is about 7 items. There are 3 key aspects to short-term memory. The first being limited capacity, again only about 7 items can be stored. The limited duration, storage is very fragile and information can be lost with distraction or passage of time. Encoding, primarily acoustic, even translating visual information into sounds. There are 2 ways in which capacity is tested, one being span, the other being recency effect. The magic number 7 plus or minus 2 provides evidence for the capacity of short-term memory. Most adults can store between 5 and 9 items in their short-term memory. This idea was put forward by Miller in 1956, and he called it the magic number 7. He thought that short-term memory could hold 7 plus or minus 2 items because it only had a certain number of slots in which items could be stored. However, Miller didn't specify the amount of information that can be held in each slot. Indeed, if we can chunk information together, we can store a lot more in our short-term memory. Miller's theory is supported by evidence from various studies, such as Jacobs in 1887. He used the digital span test with every letter in the alphabet and numbers apart from W and 7 because they had 2 syllables. He found that people won't find it easier to recall numbers rather than letters. The average span for letters was 7.3, and for numbers it was 9.3. The duration of short-term memory seems to be between 15 and 30 seconds. Again, this is according to Atkinson and Shafran in 1971. Items can be kept in short-term memory by repeating them verbally, or what is known as acoustically encoding, a process known as rehearsal. Using a technique called the Brown-Peterson technique, which prevents the possibility of retrieval from short-term memory by having participants count backwards in 3s. Peterson, in 1959, showed that the longer the delay, the less information is recalled. The rapid loss of information from memory when rehearsed is prevented by taking an addition of short-term memory having a limited duration. Conclusion for short-term memory is that it has a limited duration when rehearsal is prevented. It is thought that the information is lost from short-term memory from trace decay. The results of the study also show that short-term memory is different from long-term memory in terms of duration, thus supporting the multi-store model of memory. Long-term memory, the final stage of the multi-store memory model proposed by Atkinson and Shafran, provided the lasting retention of information and skills. Theoretically, the capacity of long-term memory could be unlimited, the main constraint of recall being accessibility rather than availability. Duration might be a few minutes or a lifetime. Suggested encoding modes are semantic, meaning visual, or pictorial in the main, but also can be acoustic. Barrick et al. In 1975 investigated what they called very long-term memory, or VLTM. Nearly 400 participants aged 17 to 74 were tested. There were various tests, including a free recall test where participants tried to remember names of people in a graduate class, a photo recognition test consisting of 50 pictures, a name recognition test for ex-school-age friends. The results of the study showed that participants who were tested within 15 years of graduation were about 90% accurate in identifying names and faces. After 48 years, they were accurate to 80% for verbal and 70% for visual. Free recall was worse. After 15 years, it was 60%, and after 48 years, it was only 30%. There are 2 types of long-term memory, procedural memory and semantic memory. Procedural memory is a part of the long-term memory responsible for knowing how to do things, i.e. memory or motor skills. It does not involve conscious or unconscious, it's just automatic. For example, procedural memory would involve knowledge on how to ride a bicycle. Semantic memory. Semantic memory is a part of the long-term memory responsible for storing information about the world. This includes knowledge about the meaning of words as well as general knowledge. For example, London is the capital of England. It involves conscious thought and is declarative. Episodic memory is a part of long-term memory responsible for storing information about events, i.e. episodes that have been experienced in our lives. It involves conscious thought and declarative motor skills. Declarative knowledge involves knowing that, for example, London is the capital of England, zebras are animals, and your mom's birthday. The knowledge that we hold in semantic and episodic memories focuses on knowing that something is the case, i.e. it's declarative. For example, we might have a semantic memory for knowing that Paris is the capital of France, and we might have an episodic memory for knowing that we caught the bus to college today. Memory retention. Most of us might have complained about our memory one time or another, but some of you have been frequently complaining about poor memory. When we generally talk about poor memory, we're talking about recollection or poor recollection. Recollection is possible only if the content is retained in memory. This is possible only if we have recorded it in the memory. That is, unless we have not assimilated, we cannot recall it at all.